Hi, this is Joan, and I'm one of the lead admins on the Ketogenic Dieters Facebook page. I've created this presentation to teach you everything you ever wanted to know about Solé, but were afraid to ask. So here is what will be covered in this presentation. Number 1, what are electrolytes and why do we need to supplement them on keto? Number 2, science lesson. Number 3, how to make Solé. And number 4, how to track sodium in your Solé. When you are on a low-carb diet, electrolytes are very important. The main electrolytes are sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Solé is a way of supplementing sodium, and so that is going to be the main focus of this presentation. Below is an excerpt from the Ruled Me website explaining why you need to supplement electrolytes on a low-carb diet. Low carbohydrate diets, mineral loss, and fluid loss. Low carbohydrate diets act as a diuretic in many other ways by increasing the excretion of fluids and minerals, not just potassium. This is why one study cites dehydration as the most common early onset complication of a ketogenic diet. Less insulin means less sodium. Insulin is a hormone that lowers our blood sugar when it is too high. Its main job is to shuttle sugar into cells so that they can use it as fuel and store the excess sugar as fat. Insulin also acts on the kidney to promote sodium reabsorption. In people who restrict carbohydrates, as we do on a ketogenic diet, insulin levels tend to be much lower. This is part of the reason why low carbohydrate diets are beneficial for people with diabetes and obesity. Unfortunately, it is also the reason why low carbohydrate diets have a diuretic effect. This is because low levels of insulin lead to less sodium reabsorption. The sodium will then draw more fluid into the kidney and be ready for excretion. This is unlikely to lead to low levels of sodium, especially if you have salt on your food. But if you have symptoms like nausea, headaches, confusion, and fatigue that don't go away, it is best to increase your unrefined salt and water intake. So, what we take from that is that this diet, by definition, causes a diuretic effect, which means that your body is flushing water and electrolytes, and you need to supplement electrolytes in order to keep them at normal levels. So the sodium that we take to supplement is not really increasing the amount of sodium in our bodies as opposed to a standard American diet, but rather replacing sodium which is lost through the diuretic effect of this diet. So sodium is really important. We have to take additional sodium while on keto because our bodies will excrete more of it than when we were on a high-carb diet. In the Ketogenic Dieters Facebook page, we recommend supplementing between 5,000 and 7,000 milligrams of sodium on top of what you get in your food. That's a lot. You will not be able to get that much just from putting extra salt on your food. One way you can get that much is by drinking a saturated solution of salt in water. This is not the only way. You can also drink bouillon or put salt in capsules and take them, but a lot of us like to use Solé because it's easy and convenient. Also allows you to be able to track very accurately how much sodium you're getting per day, and you do need to be tracking your sodium, magnesium, and potassium intake. So what is Solé? Solé is simply a saturated solution of salt in water. Drinking it gives you a lot of sodium in a small amount of liquid. Next, we're going to talk about the role of sodium in the body and what a saturated solution is. So what the heck do we mean by a saturated solution? All right, we're going to go back to high school chemistry and we're going to review what this means. In the following excerpt, think of solute as the salt in the Solé and the solvent as the water. A saturated solution is a chemical solution containing the maximum concentration of a solute dissolved in the solvent. The additional solute will not dissolve in a saturated solution. The amount of solute that can be dissolved in a solvent to form a saturated solution depends on a variety of factors. The most important factors are temperature. Solubility increases with temperature. For example, you can dissolve much more salt in hot water than in cold water. And this is why we don't want to keep our Solé in the refrigerator. You want to keep it in the cabinet or on the counter at room temperature so that it does not get cold, because if it gets cold, some of the sodium will settle out. Pressure. Increasing pressure can force more solute into a solution. This is commonly used to dissolve gases into liquids. Chemical composition. The nature of the solute and solvent and the presence of other chemicals in a solution affects solubility. For example, you can dissolve much more sugar in water than salt in water. Ethanol and water are completely soluble in each other. Examples of saturated solutions. You encounter saturated solutions in daily life, not just in a chemistry lab. Also, the solvent does not need to be water. Here are some common examples. A soda is a saturated solution of carbon dioxide in water. That is why when the pressure is released, carbon dioxide gas forms bubbles. Adding chocolate powder to milk so that it stops dissolving forms a saturated solution. Salt can be added to melted butter or oil to the point where the salt grains stop dissolving, forming a saturated solution. If you add enough sugar to your coffee or tea, you can form a saturated solution. You'll know when you've reached the saturation point when the sugar stops dissolving, meaning there's going to be solid sugar left in the bottom of the glass. Hot tea or coffee allows much more sugar to be dissolved than you can add to a cold beverage. Sugar can be added to vinegar to form a saturated solution. So, how do we make a saturated solution? There's more than one way to do it, but we're going to only use one way, making Solé, and that is to add solute, salt, to a liquid, water, until no more dissolves. The other two methods listed here are for your information and have nothing to do with making Solé. So, Solé is simply a saturated solution of salt in water. This means we dissolve as much salt in the water as can possibly be dissolved. This gives you the most concentrated saltwater solution that is possible. That way you get the most sodium per tablespoon as is possible. At one time or another, we've all tried to dissolve a ton of sugar in iced tea. At some point, the sugar just won't dissolve anymore. That's because the tea is saturated with sugar at that temperature. Now, I wanted to clarify, because I think we get a lot of questions and confusion regarding this. Based on what we talked about, chemical composition, which would be sodium and water, temperature, which there is going to be some variability in ambient temperature in your homes. Some people keep their houses warmer than others, but the margin of error is not significant. The main thing is that you aren't going to keep your Solé in the refrigerator and make the temperature very cold. As long as it's within a normal range of room temperature, it's going to be pretty much constant as far as the amount of sodium per tablespoon of water. The amount of sodium in a saturated solution of sodium in water is a constant amount. You do not have to measure the amount of salt that you're putting in your water. You don't have to measure the amount of water. When you're preparing your Solé, the only thing that's important is that within your container of however much water and however much salt, that there is solid salt at the bottom that is undissolved. If you have solid salt at the bottom of your container that is undissolved after it has been sitting for 24 hours, you have a saturated solution of Solé, and we know how much sodium is in a tablespoon of Solé because it is a known quantity based on the chemical composition. So there's no measuring of the salt or the water involved. And a lot of people get confused about that, make it more complicated than it needs to be. It is very simple. You dump a bunch of salt in some water. You let it sit for 24 hours at room temperature. And afterwards, what you get out of that, the liquid that is in there, is going to have a known amount of sodium per tablespoon so that we can track the amount of sodium that you're getting. It does not matter how much water you have in your container or how much salt you put in your container.